Thank you, Representative Anthony, for your compelling floor report.
Bingo.
Yes,
Great job.
you clearly wowed them enough that no one asked any questions
That's the
anyway.
most important thing.
So we are gonna pick back up H67. And have a couple witnesses and see how that goes. So Mr. Musgrave, I think you are first up to share your thoughts on H67 with us.
Driscoll?
Sorry, Driscoll. What is my problem today? I'm so sorry.
That's right.
I have too many bills in my head at once.
A lot going on.
And do we have the bill up on our committee page?
Yes, I'm gonna cover the committee get the current draft.
Thank you. Floor is yours.
All right, well, thank you very much. For the record, William Driscoll with Associated Industries of Vermont. We represent primarily the manufacturing sector. And a lot of familiar faces around the table, some new faces. So very nice to see you all for the first time this year and actually see you in person. So just to get right into it, with regard to H67, we do have a number of substantive issues with the bill. But I think out of respect to your time and also your primary focus as a committee, I'd like to sort of focus on some of the underlying factors driving the cost of the proposal and some concerns we have, but also some recommendations as to how to fix that through, I think, some additional language, tightening things up as I'll go through with you. So I'll try to go over what the primary source of our concern is, some ways to address that. And then there are also two other provisions in the bill that I think some folks might think on their face might address some of our concerns. And I can go through how they don't necessarily do so as written, but could also be revised to address them. And a lot of this comes down to making sure that the cost that the manufacturers through the PRO are going to have to pay are sort of accurate and reasonable. I think one of the primary points of potential concern here surrounds the obligation of the stewardship organization to pay all of the costs of the municipal solid waste districts that choose to participate in their program. Specifically, one it kind of runs through the bill, but particularly clear capturing of what I'm talking about is on page 14, line 16, where it talks about the obligation to pay all municipal costs. Now, the way that is sort of set up and described, one concern is there's not a clear path or means to have some sort of control over either ineligible or excessive costs. And what I mean by that, there's sort of two areas of risk in here. First risk is cross-subsidizing. And where that can come into play is the collection of household hazardous waste that is not actually covered under this legislation. For example, existing EPR programs like batteries or paint or things like that, which are often collected at household hazardous waste events. And then there's also the dual use question. In other words, you might have facilities or personnel who are partially dedicated to the handling of household hazardous waste, but also do other things or other functions. And so how do we be clear that the costs that are going to be passed on to the stewardship organization is actually that prorated or that portion of the cost that's attributable to the handling of covered products? So because of the way the obligation is kind of very sort of absolute, again, it's not very clear what ability or what pathway the stewardship folks would have up front to confirm the accuracy of the cost or even reject costs that might seem ineligible or excessive. Now, this issue, we did raise this issue at the outset of House Environment and Energy Committee consideration, but most of the discussion between industry and the committee was focusing on attempts of the primary stakeholders to develop some alternative legislation for the bill itself. Unfortunately, those efforts or discussions didn't provide results as of yet. They may, I imagine we'll be continuing that discussion in the Senate. But once that became clear, that larger effort was not going to prevail, there was a very brief discussion of this issue at the end of the committee's consideration. And I think initially some of the response or the thoughts of Ledge Council and others as to how this problem could be resolved, I think there was an acknowledgement that there really aren't protections explicitly in the bill to prevent either cross-subsidizing or unreasonable or excessive costs. The initial thought was perhaps that would be something that could be resolved in the contract negotiations between the stewardship organization and the municipalities. And unfortunately, and that's sort of where the discussion, they kind of ran out of, I don't want to characterize their decisions, but they were trying to get the bill out and I think they sort of left it there. But I think the concern is that that isn't really a remedy to this issue because of the fact that I may switch between PRO, which is a producer responsibility organization, and a stewardship organization. Hopefully I try to stay consistent. But the relationship between the stewardship organization and the municipalities is not one of equal partners or independent actors who have the ability to negotiate with each other freely. The stewardship folks cannot walk away from the municipalities. They have to accept them into their programs and they have to cover all of their claimed costs. It's not an option for them to either, shut them out or walk away. So there's no leverage in terms of negotiating provisions in the contract that might address some of these concerns. So that's the failing or the shortcomings of looking at contract negotiations as a way to address this issue. Two other potential ways or potential areas of getting at this issue. The first would be the audit provision in the bill, and that's on page 11, page 17, I think starts line 11. And this is where the stewardship organization hires a third-party auditor, to basically go through the books and look for cost effectiveness and issues like that. A couple of problems with that as a response. First, it's not clear from the bill that the auditor would have the authority to actually go into the books of the municipal solid waste districts, even though they're obviously part of the plan insofar as the stewardship organization is responsible for paying for their costs. But again, it's not clear that the auditor would be able to go into that level of detail. And also the audit is only every 5 years. And so you may run into a situation where you're going to be looking back at 5 years of costs and what is really the recourse if, say, ineligible or excessive costs are discovered. It's not all clear what then the response is. In other words, is there a clawback of money? Does it come out of future reimbursements? The authority in the process is not clear there. And somewhat similarly, the other potential provision that could get at some of this is on page 20, line 14, is the supervisory role of A&R.
Actually pause at the audit part. I'm
Sure.
trying to find the language they say isn't clear.
Yep. I'll try to call it up as well here.
So on the bottom of page 17, is that what you're referring to?
Yep. Yes.
And you want to ensure that the audit includes the ability to look at the municipal portion of the work.
Yeah. So and I have my recommendations at the end, but just to jump ahead.
Okay.
For this particular, so for example, for this particular provision, I think what we'd be looking for is clear authority that the auditor's authority goes into the municipal solid waste districts as well. And then there should be some provision, whether it's in this actual provision or maybe there's some general section elsewhere in the bill, is what happens when you find a problem and how is that redressed?
And did you give Saoirse your testimony?
Oh, I don't have a written testimony.
Okay.
I can certainly follow up as necessary. Sure.
Yeah, it would be very helpful to have written testimony.
Mhm.
I understand your concerns, Bill, but I actually had trouble following them without a document in front of me because you expressed a number of different things and I'm not sure how they came together.
Sure. Be happy to.
Representative Anthony?
When you do that, back to your first observation that the phrase at the beginning, all costs associated. If you have a suggestion which would guide both the auditor and the district or the vendor to focus on the separable costs. If there was some language in there, as my colleagues know, I'm a delegation guy, I want to be specific as to what the executor of the statute is supposed to do.
Oh, absolutely.
And obviously, the point is to cover all the costs directly associated with hazardous waste.
Right.
And that's not what it says. I concede that.
Yes. I will also get to recommendations and to the topic of language and stuff. But very briefly, I think all the discussion of the audit section is the issue with the supervisory role of A&R is very similar in sense. So that's on page 20, line 14. Again, I think some clarity that involves supervising a supervisory role over the solid waste districts as well. And again, say in that supervisory role, if they uncover some problems, what exactly is the next step to redress that? So in terms of what specific fixes, I think we just went over the fix we'd like to see for the audit section. I think you could have an analogous fix to the supervisory role of A&R. To get back to the original concern in terms of how do we try to assure eligibility and reasonableness up front, I think basically our suggestion would be to make it clear that the solid waste districts have to provide a very clear accounting of the costs that they're assigning and documenting how it's only covered products and it's only the portion of time or portion of facilities that they're claiming. And then the stewardship organization should have the ability to follow up on that and also to reject costs that they feel are unreasonable or excessive. Now, obviously, that can lead to a disagreement between the two sides. If they can't then agree with each other over those disputes, I think it would be appropriate to have, a third-party adjudicator. Our initial suggestion would be A&R would be able to resolve any disagreements. And that would be the primary mechanism there. Now, with regard to language, I'm trying to ask some of the industry stakeholders to develop that language. I don't have that yet. But what I would request, this might be a more efficient and timely process. I believe that if the committee were to authorize Ledge Council to work with us on language, that might make sure that whatever we propose fits most appropriately and seamlessly into the bill, as opposed to us coming with a proposal and then having to reinterpret it that way. And I have given a heads up about this to A&R. They don't have an official response yet, but there were no alarm bells that went off, and I'm sure they would have some thoughts as well in terms of language. So that's it. I mean, there are some other provisions, but those would be the ones I think that are most squarely in your wheelhouse.
Thanks for staying in our wheelhouse. Like, really, truly, thank you for staying in our wheelhouse.
On this bill, I might have some other ideas elsewhere. But.
Okay. And want to hear from the other stakeholders here. The first and the second one sound very reasonable, and we're sort of on a timeline here, and so want to see if we can make that work.
Yes.
Your lack of written testimony makes that harder.
Okay.
So let's see what we can do.
Mm-hmm. It's my impression that it's not a heavy lift for Ledge Council if we can work together.
No, it seems like not all that many words. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I just might want to say also, I had the opportunity in House Commerce to tell them that historically there used to be a huge bowl of candy in front of the witnesses. It'd be nice to bring that tradition back. But at least you have something in the corner.
I was on House Commerce, and the enormous bowls of Doritos for many years before the pandemic were a lot for me, and I'm sort of grateful we don't have the bowls on the table anymore. But yes, please, well,
Help yourself.
it's sort of like the bank, help yourself to a lollipop on your way out. Mr. Letty. Are you able, there you are. Hello. Welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, hi, I know you.
Yes.
Good to see you.
It's been a while.
Yes, it's been a very long time. Hello.
Hi.
So I'm very glad you can join us today. Thank you. And we're here curious about your thoughts on the bill as a whole. And then also, I believe Representative Sims, we have some questions about if that amendment that is on our page would also sort of would be implementable for you. And then you're also welcome to comment on our last witness's thoughts. So nice suite of questions for you.
All right. I will keep my comments brief and then also open it to questions you might have.
Great.
So I'll start from the beginning, if that's okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you and for the opportunity to address the committee. And my name, for the record, is John Letty. I'm the Executive Director of the Northwest Vermont Solid Waste Management District. I'm also the chair of the Vermont Solid Waste District Managers Association. And the Northwest Solid Waste Management District comprises Franklin and Grand Isle counties. And our population is just around 54,000 people. We operate a permanent HHW facility for the use of our district residents. So that is a facility that's open and collecting hazardous materials from households and very small quantity generator businesses. It's open 5 days a week for those purposes. And in this coming year, our budget for our HHW programs, which includes labor to operate that facility and disposal of all items, is just about $75,000. So the portion of this bill that covered materials, as you know, we've been saying, the costs we estimate for those is about $25,000. That includes the labor to collect them, supplies such as drums and absorbents and things like that that are involved in the packaging of those items, and then ultimately the disposal of those materials also. In addition to our permanent facility, we operate a number 6 collection events that range throughout our service area. And those collection events are to assist residents who are further away from our the HHW facility, which is located in Georgia. So we travel to Montgomery and Highgate and Grand Isle and North Hero so that we can make sure that folks who are in those outlying areas have an opportunity at something that's a little bit more convenient. And that's unique to our district. I know some other districts who have permanent facilities don't have as many collection events, but that's the way we've been operating it. So in general, the costs for these programs are certainly more than the residents who use our facility and use our services, I think would be willing to pay for the direct disposal of those items. So we currently do charge our residents some money when they use our facility or use our events. However, it's a fraction of the cost of what those services are. And the rest of the money, the pay for those services comes from either our district surcharge, which we levy on the trash that's generated within our district, or grants from the Agency of Natural Resources. And we really look forward to the opportunity of a stewardship program like this that can help cover those costs for these really toxic, dangerous items that we don't want going to the landfill. And that would, free up our district funds for more programs in other areas. So the amendment. Having read very briefly the amendment this morning, I certainly have no problem. I think we really strive towards making sure our programs are accessible and equitable, and would welcome further opportunities to make sure that we're reaching all the corners of our district and all the different demographics and populations that reside in Franklin and Grand Isle counties.
Great, thank you. And did you overhear the previous testimony? And do you have, I know we don't have anything written to share, but do you have any thoughts on any of that?
I didn't catch all of it, and I didn't have any comment on the parts that I did hear. So if there's something specific that somebody wants my 2 cents on, definitely happy to let you know.
Thank you. We'll send it over. We have a question for you, Representative Taylor.
Well, I'm not sure who it's for. It's for anybody who can answer it. But I think we have people here who should be able to. I understand the stewardship organization is a collection of manufacturers that get together and set up the stewardship organization, and the stewardship organization recycles the products that the manufacturers manufacture or gets them, disposes of them. Is the stewardship organization only handling the products of the manufacturers who, okay, I see different.
But just keep on going with
okay. Because my concern is you have one location. Are you going to have multiple stewardship organizations picking up hazardous waste at one location, or is one stewardship organization going to pick up everything and get it to the others?
So I think that question, Mr. Leddy, you're welcome to answer it. I know that Ms. Holliday is sort of here as a representative of all the solid waste entities, and she's been very involved in this. So you're welcome to defer to her if you'd prefer as well.
I know Jen certainly has the big picture of stewardship organizations, how they work, having worked on other EPR programs. From our perspective, we participate in stewardship programs for batteries, electronics. Electronics might be a good example in that we collect multiple electronics varieties, both items that are, as we say, within the stewardship program and outside of the stewardship program. I think it is a case-by-case basis, but with e-waste, the one vendor services both in-program items and out-of-program items. It's up to us as the collector to keep those separate. And so that is one option, especially when you're dealing with, there's only so many hazardous waste service providers in the state. So I don't imagine that there'll be multiple hazardous waste service providers, but that's just my understanding. And I see Jen's here, so I can defer to her too.
Thanks for joining us.
Hi, good afternoon. I don't know whether John answered that question well enough for you all, or if you want me to add to that. I'm happy to.
Please.
Why don't you introduce yourself and then you can add to it, and then we can go into your testimony if that works for you.
Sure.
And thank you for joining us, Mr. Leddy. Appreciate it. And good to see you.
So for the record, my name is Jen Holliday. I'm with the Chittenden Solid Waste District. I'm the Director of Public Policy and Communications for CSWD. So the way that our EPR programs, and generally speaking, EPR programs work, the producers are responsible for the collection of material. However, the way that it generally works is that municipalities provide for this collection, hazardous waste transporters provide the services that they provide, and the producers don't physically do any of this. It's done by the infrastructure on the ground, and then we are reimbursed for that work that we do on their behalf. Does that answer the question?
Not really.
Okay.
If I have, I'm sorry, but if I have Easy Off or something like this, and that whoever makes it, Dow Chemical or something, gets together with and has a stewardship organization that will take care of Easy Off. So at a municipal solid waste district facility, I would take my Easy Off and the stewardship organization would take that and get rid of it. But now if there's another product from a different manufacturer with a different stewardship organization, will there be two stewardship organizations working within the same solid waste facility saying, I'll take the Easy Off, you take the other thing? Or are you going to take them and then divvy them out to the various stewardship organizations? Or, and in which case, what happens to things that are not covered by either of the stewardship organizations? How closely tied are the stewardship organizations to the manufacturers of the products that they're handling? I guess is my question.
Okay. So I'm just looking at the bill for a second here. And I'm probably not going to find it quickly. I am almost 100% certain, but I would have to find it in the bill, that there can be more than one stewardship organization. Generally speaking, the programs we have in place in Vermont, there is only one. It does allow for more than one in the bill, but there has to be, the stewardship organizations have to work together. I believe this bill requires a submittal of one plan jointly, or at least at a minimum, they have to work together to implement a program. You can't really have different stewardship organizations working in one part of the state or you know, it's just not efficient that way. So the PRO, the producers, the way that it generally works is producers form a stewardship organization that will represent their products. And then because it's a third party, they submit sales data of their products. And they're charged for the program costs based on how much is estimated sold into the state. Audits can happen. I know that in Canada, where they have these programs for household hazardous waste, the steward organizations do audits of the drums and to see what's in there, to see if it reflects that sales data. They can do it on different ways to figure out what the costs would be, the accounting of what material they're responsible for. Does that help at all?
I think so. I guess I need to look through the bill and see if it actually, where it says something about a single plan for all stewardship organizations. But I mean, I can see what you're saying. I understand.
Great.
I see that everyone wants to jump. Are we jumping in on the same topic? Because I just want to give Mr. Taylor time to.
I just want to reassure my colleague that the price of selling your product in the state is that you will be a membership of a stewardship organization. Excuse me?
A stewardship organization.
That's right. And part two, there are so-called orphan hazardous waste. That is to say, the manufacturer doesn't exist anymore, and the manufacturers who are still in business shall share the disposal costs for the orphan products.
That's correct. So if an orphan product is a product where, as you said, the manufacturer no longer exists. So for example, we have an EPR program for electronics, and some of those electronic manufacturers no longer exist that produced TVs back in the 50s that municipalities are collecting. that cost has to be rolled into the entire cost of the program and included, because we don't want those products to not get captured by the program, or for the municipality to have to pay for those products.
Yeah, and I think I saw that in the bill, so that I understand. So that the question that's still kind of hanging is whether there is more than one stewardship organization and how do they work with each other if they need to.
In this particular program?
Yes, in this particular program.
So I believe in this particular, like I said, I'm almost 100% sure. I haven't read the bill for a couple of weeks now, but they have to submit a joint plan.
Joint plan. Okay, yeah, I'll look through the bill and see if I can.
Okay, and we can come back to this
Okay.
if you are not satisfied with your own journey.
I'm fine.
Okay, cool. Ms. Holliday, I imagine that you have a sort of a larger body of testimony that you want to share with us.
Sure, briefly, I'll try to be quick. Sorry, I've lost my screen. So what I wanted to talk about a little bit is just how this bill has come about and why it's important to Swimmies. So in addition to working under the Chittenden Solid Waste District, I'm also a founding member and the chair of the Vermont Product Stewardship Council. And the membership of the Stewardship Council includes most of the Vermont Swimmies. We were formed in 2008, and we've been working on extended producer responsibility initiatives since that time that have resulted in several EPR laws in Vermont. And EPR for household hazardous waste has been a priority for the council and for the Swimmies for the past 9 years. There's been a bill introduced every biennium for the past 3 biennia, and 2 of those bills have passed the House. So H67 is the 4th EPR for household hazardous waste bill that we've been involved in. And the reason why this is so important for CSWD and the other Swimmies is because it is the most toxic part of our waste stream. And so it's very critical to keep out of the landfill and the wastewaters to protect Vermont's environment. And we need help with this because it's really difficult material to manage and it's very expensive. So collectively, Swimmies have spent approximately $2.2 million last year for household hazardous waste collection. And we anticipate those costs to just continue to rise each year. So what the requirements are for Swimmies is at a minimum, and these requirements fall under what's called the Solid Waste Implementation Plan that's under the Agency of Natural Resources. We have to provide at a minimum 2 household hazardous waste collection events per year. So some of us do provide more than this, as Mr. Leddy indicated with his permanent facility. CSWD also has a permanent facility. There's actually 7 permanent household hazardous waste collection facilities in Vermont. And then there are the Swimmies that only provide the 2 collection events per year. So the levels of convenience do vary around the state. CSWD's permanent collection facility is open 5 days a week, year round. We also have a satellite collection program. It's called the Rover, and that does collection events in our community during the warmer months of the year. So we run this operation with our own staff who consolidates the waste, and it's transported out of state by a hazardous waste contractor for recycling or incineration or some other form of treatment. And some of the waste goes as far as Texas to be managed. This last fiscal year, we spent our total expenses were approximately $780,000. We're budgeting a little over $1 million in expenses for FY24. And part of that increase is because our hazardous waste disposal contractor has raised their prices by 35% in the last year. This has been a problem for Swimmies universally. They're reporting significant increases in disposal costs. And then those Swimmies that are only holding events are experiencing additional increases in cost with what's called setup fees. And that's in the bill that these costs would be covered. Setup fees are the charge that the contractor charges just to set up and hold the event. And these fees have gone up over 400% in just 2 years for some of the Swimmies, where they're paying close to $15,000 per event before even a drop of household hazardous waste is being collected. Lamoille Solid Waste District provided testimony that their cost for collecting household hazardous waste amounted to $4,400 per ton last year. And to put that in perspective, Susan Alexander from Lamoille compared it to their costs for trash collection, transportation, and disposal, which is $97.19 per ton. So clearly, these programs are incredibly expensive, and despite all of our efforts to provide collection programs throughout the states at this expense, there is still a lot of toxic waste going into Vermont's only landfill every year. According to the 2018 State of Vermont Waste Characterization Study, 855 tons of household hazardous waste was put into the trash and hauled up to Coventry. So we know that household hazardous waste is also going down the drains, but we have no way to quantify that. Swimmies would like to help address this issue by providing more frequent and more convenient collection programs, but it's just too expensive. So that is, in a nutshell, why H67 is so important to us. And we think that H67 is going to help us do a few things. It's going to put the cost of managing these products on the producers. They have control of what they put into the marketplace, and they're profiting from them instead of putting the cost on local government and taxpayers. It will also provide an incentive to manufacturers to reduce the toxicity of their products so that they don't require special management. It requires producers to help provide education on proper disposal and waste reduction. It'll protect solid waste workers by keeping household hazardous waste out of the trash. And it protects our ground and surface waters by keeping household hazardous waste out of the trash and from being disposed down the drain. H67 is not a new concept in Vermont. It is modeled after Vermont's very effective EPR laws for other products. These include electronics, batteries, paint, mercury lamps, and mercury thermostats. And like most of those programs, with the exception of paint, this bill will not increase the cost of household hazardous products for Vermont consumers because there's no fee at the point of sale. So we do anticipate that more household hazardous waste can be kept out of the landfill because of our experience with these other EPR programs that have resulted in some of the highest collection rates in the country. And we have found that these laws to be very successful in accomplishing their purpose, which is keeping difficult to manage and toxic materials out of the landfill and the environment, while reducing costs for local government and taxpayers who have the greatest burden to manage these materials and the least ability to affect change in the formulation or sales of these products. In respect to Representative Sims' amendment, we support its intention in making access to collection convenient and equitable and placing that responsibility on the producers of the products. So we don't have any problem with that. Number two of the amendment, Swimmies currently collect this kind of data, And so I think it is reasonable to require the producers to report on this information, and I don't think it will be a hardship. And then the auditor requirements to report on the effectiveness and accessibility of the program is reasonable. And it would be helpful in understanding where more service is needed in Vermont.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, with respect to Mr. Driscoll's testimony, I have a little bit of a challenge not seeing it in advance and seeing it written, but I just have a few comments about some of that, which is in terms of covering all of SWME's costs. This is part of the requirement is for them to put it in the plan on how they would do so. So they can get into as much detail as they want on how that would be done, and then A&R would approve or not approve it based on the intent of the law. Municipalities are public entities, and therefore our books are open, and any auditor would have access to all of our financial information related to the program.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Anyone? Is that a hand up?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Hi.
Sometimes you're just like saying this works for me.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not quite sure whether to.
I have a question. Jen, I'm gonna look at the camera instead of the screen, because otherwise it looks like I'm staring at outer space. We've been creating stewardship programs in Vermont for a number of years, different ones, as you pointed out. And I'm curious to know, from year to year going forward, whether or not, particularly with the hazardous waste, which is the most dramatic in terms of what we're trying to get out of the landfills, I think. What you receive in terms of feedback over time from manufacturers and whether they're actually getting less of this junk out into the market, whether they modify their products so they're not so toxic, for example, or make good use of the mercury electronics. But anyway, without going on and on, the point is I would like to know, I think it would be all of us, it would be benefit all of us to know what effect these stewardship programs actually have on reducing the toxicity of products in the first place, and anything else that goes in that big bucket. Maybe you won't hear from a while, but for a while. But anyway, be nice to know.
Agreed. And we don't have the data on that. Obviously, it's complicated information, and we don't hear directly from producers. But what we do see is that producers more and more anticipate these type of programs or laws to be introduced, and to have some responsibility for their products with the EPR laws that are passing in the United States. And it's really created a momentum, particularly around packaging and the toxic products. So I can't answer your question directly, but I can say that producers are aware that they will likely be asked to have some responsibility in the management of their products at the end of life. And so I would think that, along with everything else that they have to think about in designing their products, that is one of them.
Hopefully, and thank you.
Representative?
My comment is, first of all, we heard from Mr. Leddy that his hazardous waste collection efforts are located in Georgia, in the town of Georgia, up in Franklin County, but he also does kind of off-site collections in Highgate and over in, I think you said South Harrow, it might have been North Harrow, but Highgate is about a half hour from the big collection site, the building is and the transfer stations are. And South Harrow, it depends on the roads, because we have the causeway that you have to drive over. So on a day like today or last night, certainly it would have taken longer, but at the most it's 45 minutes. So not a long time. But the point of our amendment, or Representative Sims' amendment, is that convenience be extended all over the state, not only the county closest to Chittenden County, but all over the state. So I think it's really important that we leave that amendment in there. The intent is something that really ought to happen. And my other comment regarding the auditor, this lady is absolutely correct that when an auditor is hired, the reason he's hired gives him access to the books, which are open public records anyway for municipalities. So I don't think we need any other legislation to grant that. The rest of what the first gentleman who spoke, his intent, I'm not really clear on, because we never saw it in writing. So perhaps we need to wait for that. But my thought with the auditor is we don't need to do any effort with that. It's there. So thank you.
Ms. Holly, do you have anything else you want to share with us today?
No,
Okay.
thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate it. Oh, wait, sorry, one more.
Bill Driscoll, I forgot.
So Representative Brannigan's comments on the Sims Amendment are the existing EPR programs equitably and conveniently located statewide?
Yeah, actually, some of them are, and that is because a lot of these products are a little bit easier to collect. So retailers are voluntarily collecting, for example, paint. Any retailer that wants to participate in the EPR program is the PRO is required to allow them. So there's a lot of paint stores that are taking paint back. Batteries are also something that are collected more regularly at other locations other than household hazardous waste events. CSWD has 6 drop-off centers. 5 of them collect fluorescent light bulbs and batteries. And some retailers are also collecting fluorescent bulbs. There's a mailback program for mercury thermostats. So, those EPR programs actually, and electronics, there's a lot of electronics collection locations for electronics that are participating in the stewardship program. Household hazardous waste is a little bit difficult to put into that category of allowing, you don't want retailers collecting household hazardous waste and town offices. And so that's a more difficult area to provide convenience. And we have been struggling with this conversation with ANR for many, many, many years, trying to figure out how to provide as much convenience as is necessary to keep the material out of the landfill. And this is a start. I think with some of these costs covered, municipalities can offer potentially more collection programs or even permanent facilities.
Thank you.
But I also said, just let you know, a national study showed that households only need to use a household hazardous waste collection program once every 7.4 years. So, if you have to drive a half an hour away, you probably will go by that location sometime in 7 years. So you don't need the same level of convenience that you do need for some other items that you generate more frequently.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great evening. I hope you don't have much driving to do in the snow.
Thanks, you.
So committee, I would like to not sit with this bill for a very long time. We've already sat with it for a while. And I know that there's a request for some changes. There's also another body. I'm feeling sort of torn on a path, so I'm just sort of curious from other people if they would, since we don't have language in front of us, if we want to wait another week while language is drafted up, or if we want to sort of pass the language that we have and offer the opportunity for those other changes to get taken up in the other body.
I really think the other body would have more time to debate that and do the research needed. However, I believe that Representative Sims' amendment is easy and was presented to us in writing. I think that we could adopt that easily.
Okay. I totally hear that. Yeah, Representative Taylor.
I found the portion that deals with that, it's section 7183, and it's not clear. But I think it could be cleared up to the other body as long as we get that communicated to them.
Okay.
Great, Kurt.
Okay. Mr. Driscoll, I think we're sending you off to the other body. I'm sorry. So in that case, do I have a motion for Representative Sims' amendment to, I need some help with procedure here. Do we want Representative Sims' amendment to amend our other amendment, or do we want?
You want one.
One amendment.
We want one amendment, so we would, yes. So folks, can someone make a motion that works here?
Is it a strike all? There's an existing
No.
amendment.
It incorporates both Mike's amendment and your amendment into one.
Yes,
You just don't have that.
yes.
So you want a motion?
I don't make the motion.
No.
I just want a motion to
Don't look at me.
I want to have a motion on Representative Sims'
I'll
amendment.
make a motion that we
Thank you.
take up Representative Sims' amendment.
Second. Okay.
Any discussion? You can call the roll. What? That's the rural equity stuff.
Which they already did. It's kind of in the bill already.
It's a belts and suspenders kind of move. Hoping to say that once a week. It's like how I'm really claiming the chair. Yeah. We're ready.
We're ready.
Mhm.
Andrews, yes. Anthony,
Yes.
Beck,
Yes.
Brannigan,
Yes.
Yes.
Maslin.
Yep.
Meadows,
Yep.
Odie,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Canfield,
Yes.
Kornheiser,
Yes.
12-0-0.
We're all here. That's how important this amendment was, Representative.
Okay.
And then a motion on the technical change that legislative council brought to us, which took out something that was supposed to not be in the bill in the first place. Yes, that removed pesticides. It's on our committee page. So moved?
Second.
Okay.
Who moved it? You? Oh.
Representative Maslin
I
moved
missed
it. Representative Beck seconded.
Ready to rock?
We are, any discussion on that one? Okay, ready to vote.
Andrews, yes. Anthony,
Yes.
Beck,
Yes.
Brannigan,
Yes.
Demro,
Yes.
Maslin,
Yep.
Meadows,
Yep.
Odie,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Canfield,
Yes.
Kornheiser.
Yes. We are going to ask legislative council to put that into one amendment. And then Representative Kennedy is going to report it. Okay. Oh, we have to vote the bill.
I was just gonna say,
Vote the bill, motion.
moved.
Make a motion that we vote on,
Representative Andrew
PR.
moved it already.
no, I'm sorry. I was just gonna give you the full name of it there.
Would you like to second?
Oh, sure, sir.
Okay.
Ready?
Any discussion?
I can't support the bill based on the fact that we're gonna pass legislation that will set a fee that we have no idea what the price is, because that's not until later. And I would have really enjoyed seeing some language about this and being able to let the other body know that it's not 100% complete in our eyes, I can't support the bill.
Yeah.
Can you remind me where that fee's coming from?
It's the fee on the manufacturers.
So they're negotiating it amongst themselves, is my understanding of it. So we're not actually setting it.
Well, natural resources.
So we're not setting it and we're not collecting it? Or who's collecting it?
I'm pulling it back up again.
Yeah, so
Oh, registration fee.
A&R recommendation of registration fee.
And so the registration, and I hear you, so the fee that is being set in the future, possibly, and we would still have to vote on that fee in the future.
Yeah.
Yes,
It comes to
definitely.
her.
Yeah, we would have to vote on it in the future. So the fee is the registration, but the cost, the stewardship cost being shared is sort of a separate thing that the stewardship costs are being figured out.
And that's fine, it just.
Yeah,
it-
no, I totally hear you. I think that's a valid point.
Setting it in motion and have no idea what it costs. Because even though the manufacturer is gonna pay for it, it's gonna be the consumer that pays for it.
Amongst the stewardship organization,
Correct.
yes.
Yep.
But the fee here is not the fee that's gonna cover the costs of the stewarding. The fee is just the cost to register with the state and for the state to interact with the stewardship organization.
Right, and in turn.
Yes, okay. I'm not debating, I just want to make sure that we're all clear, because none of us have looked at this language in a week and we've seen 20 bills in the meantime. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Okay.
That's my opinion.
Great, thank you for letting us all know. Any further discussion? Okay. Representative Maslin.
Yeah, not to argue, Chris, but
I'm sorry?
I'm looking forward to the cost of disposal, cost of pickup, or whatever it is that the manufacturers are responsible for to driving change.
And I remember that A&R came in and was very supportive of all of this language. I think they've really driven this process, but we haven't had them in for, was that a week ago that they came in?
At least.
I mean, Andrews, yes. Anthony,
Yes.
Beck,
Yes.
Brannigan,
Yes.
Demro,
Yes.
Maslin.
Yep.
Maddox,
No,
Odie. Yes. Sims,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Canfield,
No.
Kornheiser.
Yes.
So let me do some math here, 10-0.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Who's doing
Is
this
it
one?
Friday yet? Carol's doing it. It's not Friday yet, and we will be back here tomorrow morning